Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be taking a look at how to make a big box version of a video game. In particular, we're going to be looking at a game that was developed recently by Ferreira, and some of you may already be familiar with this game. It's called Invasion of the Cloud People, and he recently made available a physical version of this game, and some of you will already have this game in your collection. Now, the version that he sent out to his supporters is a DVD style case, but I thought it would be kind of fun to make a big box version of this game to send to TJ for him to have in his collection. So I'm going to go through the process of showing you how I make big box versions of games. And just to give you a sneak peek, today's video game is Invasion of the Cloud People, The Next Storm, big box version. So if that sounds like fun, we're going to get into all the details of how to build a big box version from scratch. So stick around and we'll get started right now. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is design the top of the box. And I have a template here that I've got set up in my Inkscape program that you can see here. I'll just zoom in a bit and you can see that it is a rectangle with some patterns designed on it, as well as one small graphic here. So in the corners you can see, and I'll zoom in on one of these corners, this is going to be the part that gets cut out. When the graphic comes back from the printer, I'm going to cut along this line here, and I'll cut around this little tab here and down to the bottom here. So this section of the corner will be removed, and that will be the same for all four corners. So I'm just going to cut out these four corners, and everything that's left inside, so this top rectangle, the two side rectangles, the bottom rectangle, and of course the center, is going to make up the top half of the big box. So here we have one of the graphics that TJ provided me, and the first thing I want to do is I want to isolate some of these individual graphics so that I can insert them into my design individually instead of inserting it as a complete graphic like this with all the elements already there. I want to be able to manipulate all the pieces independently, and in order to do that I need to separate them out, and I'm going to be doing that in Paint 3D just on my Windows computer here. And so I'll be saving several edited files that I can use in my design. So some of the elements I'm going to crop out. For example, this alien I'm obviously probably going to want to use, and these screenshots on the back I'm going to want to use those. But some of these text elements, such as down here where we have the box text showing system requirements, etc., those I will probably just recreate using the text font that's in Inkscape. So instead of just cutting and pasting these text elements as graphics, I think I'm probably going to try to recreate them. Although some of the text that is unique, like the title here that has Invasion of the Cloud People, that has this unique font, I don't know if I have that font in my system. I probably don't. So some of these cool looking fonts I will probably just extract as images. So I won't be able to actually insert these as text, but that's okay. I'm just going to use them as images. And there's two ways that I can do this. One way is I can just edit this file the way it is. So for example, let's say I just want to grab this alien here, or this cloud person I should say. What I can do is, let's say I'll go to the canvas tool at the top here, and if I just want to crop out the alien, I could just change the size of my canvas here, like this for example, and just crop the specific element that I want to save. So here I'm just trying to isolate this one alien and maybe some of these cloud graphic designs on the side of him here. And parts of this image I might want to edit or get rid of some of the extra graphics. For example, like if I zoom in here, there's an extra alien that's cut in half I might not want. So I'll just, for example, in this case, I could drag part of this black background over top of him to get rid of him like that. And then I can just modify this image However, I want to make it usable in my Inkscape program as an individual element. And another thing I could do, if I just exit back out of here to get rid of my changes. So what I could also do is, instead of cropping certain things like that, I could also take a screenshot if the part of the graphic that I'm screenshotting is good enough quality. So for example, let's say I wanted to screenshot this font here, The Next Storm. I could do that as well. Instead of modifying this image directly, I can take a new screenshot of it, of just that section. So here I'm just screenshotting this particular text. And there we go. Now I have this section of the graphic isolated that I can save individually and insert that into the Inkscape program design as well. So these are the techniques that I'm going to use to try and isolate some of the graphics that I want to use, and I'll play around with them and see what I can come up with in terms of making a big box design. And this is the top half of the box. Of course, we're going to have to come back and do the bottom half in a little bit, but I'm going to start with the top half and see how it goes. So stick around and we'll see what it looks like. All right, one more trick I want to show you, which I'm sure is well known to many of you, is I'm going to remove the background for this particular image. Sometimes it's handy to remove the background. So here I have a graphic that has a black background. Let's say I wanted to insert that onto a graphic that doesn't have a black background, and I don't want this black background behind these letters. What I can do is remove the background, and the way I'm going to do that is by using a free online tool right here, which is at remove.bg. That's the website where you can upload your pictures to remove the background. So here I'm going to just upload my image. So now I have my UB Games logo with the background removed, and I can go ahead and click this download button, and there it is right there, UB logo remove BG, and there it is there, UB logo no background. So now I can go ahead and go back to my Inkscape program, and I'll go ahead and file, import, and this is going to let me import an image, which is this one here, the one I just removed the background. And now you can see here it is right here, and when I move it over my existing graphics that I have on the screen, you can see that there's no black background anymore, although the background is black. But you can see as I move it around, there actually is no background on this image anymore. So it's very handy to be able to remove the background of some of these graphic elements as well, to make it more flexible when I'm designing my image. Okay, another little trick for us there we can use, and I'll go ahead and continue on with my design. So another little trick I want to show you is how we can upscale parts of the image that might not be smooth enough or high enough resolution. So for example, if we take a look at this invasion graphic here, I'm just going to take a screenshot of that one particular part of the image right here, and I'm going to save it just anywhere. So I'll just save it here, and I'll call it Invasion. Oh, I already have one called Invasion. I'll call it Invasion 2. Invasion 2. Okay. So this is the original image. You can see, well, you can see it's kind of fuzzy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload it to a website that allows us to upscale that image and smooth it out. And this is the website I'm going to be using right here. It's called pixelcut.ai/image-upscaler. And here, if I click on this button, it says upload your image. So I'll upload this Invasion 2 file here. And there it is. So it's uploaded now to this website. Okay, so there you go. You can see what it looked like before, kind of fuzzy on the edges there. And this is what it's going to look like once it's upscaled. So let's go ahead and download this. And so now it's downloaded. And I'll go ahead and open it up and see what it looks like. All right, so this is the downloaded image that was cleaned up or upscaled from my original. So there you can see the difference, how it looks, right? So it's a big difference between the original, I guess, low resolution pixelated version of this graphic and comparing it to the upscaled version, which is over here. And now just a quick and dirty way of kind of smoothing out this type of image is what I'm going to do is fill in these characters, these white portions of the graphic, with more color. So let's go ahead and pick the color white here, and I'm going to go up to the top here to brushes, which is already selected, and the brush I'm going to use is this paint can over here, which is the fill, and then you can select the tolerance and the opacity. So I want the opacity to be 100%. That means totally solid, there's no transparency, and the tolerance will determine how carefully it looks at the edges of the portion that it's filling in. So if there's a low tolerance, it's just going to barely fill in whatever it can without trying to go outside the edges. And if there's a high tolerance, then it will try and fill in as much as possible. So I'm going to try just at this level here. And right now, let's see what color I have selected. I'll move myself out of the way here. So I'm going to select white. And if I just click on, let's say, this S here, and we'll see if it fills it in. So you can see it made it a tiny bit thicker. I'll just zoom in a bit here. So if I keep clicking on this to fill it in, and I can increase the tolerance to make it fill in even more aggressively, and there every time I click it in, you can see it makes it thicker and thicker. And so I can try it on this O here. Let's say I use a different color, maybe red, and I'll fill in this O with red, and you can see now the edges of it, and if I click on it more and more, it gets thicker and thicker. And so that's, in this particular case, it doesn't seem to be creating an effect that I find appealing, but it is a quite handy effect to use when the edges aren't quite as jagged as this one. This one needs some serious smoothing, although I think I'll probably just leave it like this because it's going to be zoomed out to about this level. But you can see here the difference in the smoothness of this I compared to the other unsmoothed letters. Okay, so I'll go ahead and continue with my design now, and I'll be back in a moment. Okay, so here we go. I think I'm done designing the top of the big box for the Cloud People game. So you can see it here. I'll just zoom in a bit. And it is quite similar to the original design that TJ has for the DVD front cover of his game, which looks like this. So you can see we have the alien or cloud person on the front there with the same titles as I've used. I've just changed up some of the graphics around the edges a little bit, but other than that I've kept it pretty much similar, and I've added a limited collector's edition badge there, and I've also put on some of the enemies in the game. Right here you can see, well, there's the Cellustorm up here, and here's the Hail Bopper and the red and blue raindrops. This is the Chakra Lightning Bolt, and down here we have the Twistatron evil enemy, and then some other logos I've thrown on there. So this is, I think, the final cover I'm going to use for the box top. And of course I also need to design the bottom of the box, and for that I have another template which looks like this here. So obviously this large rectangle surface is the large face of the box, either the top or the bottom. In this case it's the bottom, and then I'm just simply going to fold down these side panels here, and I have a few tabs here, these little tabs that stick out. These are to help connect the graphics to the edges better. So this is what the template looks like for the bottom of the box that I'll be using. So now I'm going to choose some graphics for the bottom of the box, and then I'll come back and show you what that looks like. So stick around and we'll be right back. Alright, so I've finished the bottom artwork for the box, and it was surprisingly pretty easy to do. It should be simpler because, as you can see, it doesn't need all of these tabs to be filled in here around the edges. So these tabs here on the edges of this design are just blank because these are going to be folded inside the box. They're going to be covered by the top part of the box. So luckily I don't need to design graphics for these outer tabs, so that makes my job a bit easier. But I think the inside graphics came out pretty good. Let's zoom in a bit and see what we have. So I have a giant cloud person in the background there, along with the challenge statement that was on TJ's original artwork. Are you up to the task? Help pilot Storm to defeat the nasty rotten cloud people. And then I have the logo down at the bottom, along with the website youbastardgames.com, and a little blurb up here. Explore 10 exciting levels, including the mysterious cloud triangle, collecting life-giving blue raindrops while avoiding deadly rain. Can't speak today. While avoiding deadly red acid rain and an assortment of nasties. Okay, so I think it came out pretty good. And I just have a copyright notice over on the side here. You can see what the graphic looks like for yourself. And I should be able to print this. Oh, one thing I need to do is erase this yellow outer box here, which is just a guideline for me to position the graphics. I don't want that to be printed. It's going to just fold at these natural corner positions here. So here's the rectangle down here. I'm just going to turn it off. And now it should be invisible. Yep, so there we go. So now I am ready to go ahead and print these graphics. I'm printing it on 11 by 17 paper, which should nicely fit the box I'm using. And then once that's done, I'll come back and I'll show you how to assemble it. Alright, so I thought I'd do a little bonus for you, which is I decided to create some magnets for TJ's Big Box game. And I thought I might as well show you how I make my magnets. So here is the design that I've made for the magnet sheet. It's going to be printed on an 8.5 by 11 letter size standard piece of paper. And I don't use any special paper for this. I just go down to Staples and have them print out on the regular paper that they use for printing. And it's going to look like this. So there are 3 different magnets per row here. We have a picture of TJ with his cloud person on the hoverboard. We have a UB Games with another cloud person above it. And we have the UBastard logo on the left. So I'm going to print 3 sets of these magnets. It looks like I can fit 3 sets of magnets on the sheet. So I'm going to get this sheet printed out, and then I'll also show you how I convert this into magnets. So there's plenty more to come. Stick around, and in the video we're going to go ahead and take all these graphics, put them together into a big box, as well as these magnets will be an added extra bonus that we're going to throw into the box as well. Okay, so we'll be back in a moment. So I have the graphics back from the printers, and let's take a look. First we have the graphics for the top half of the box right here. I think it came out really nice. And you can see it also has printing around the edge flaps as well, because those are going to be shown when the game box is closed. We also have the graphics for the bottom half of the box right here. Again, I think it came out really nice. This one, of course, does not require graphics along the edge flaps, because those flaps are going to be hidden by the top half of the box once it's assembled anyway. And so we just need to cut these out and apply them to the surface of the box. But before we do that, I'm just going to show you the magnet graphics that we also have ready to go now. And we can use this to make up a few sets of cool Cloud People magnets, and UBastard magnets, and UB Games magnets. Okay, so before we do that, I'm just going to show you the type of box that I'll be using to make this big box version of the game. And here it is right here. This is a regular cardboard box that I get from Michael's craft store. And these come in both black and white. In this case, since the graphics I'm using are black, I'm going to apply it to a black box because it will match more easily. We won't have a problem of the box color clashing with the color of the graphics, although we could just as easily use a white box, but since my graphics are black, I'm going to use a black box in this case as well. So before we go ahead and apply the graphics to the box, one thing I need to do is a slight modification to this overhang here. You can see that the top half of the box sits quite a bit higher than the bottom of the box, than the base. I prefer to have the lip not be quite so large, and if we take a look at my Dungeon Quest game that I made here, you can see that the overhang is quite a bit smaller than it is the way it comes from the store. So I still want to have a bit of a lip for people to grab onto when they're opening the game box, but I don't want it to be quite this large. So the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and modify this box to reduce that overhang or lip or whatever it's called, so that it looks a bit better, and we'll do that right now. So as I mentioned, the first thing we want to do is go ahead and modify this box so that it doesn't have quite so much of a lip here. You can see it's overhanging a bit too much, and so the way we're going to do that is by opening it up. And the first thing we want to do is to cut the corners of the box here so that we can shorten the width of these flaps. So that's very simple to do. I'm simply going to cut into the corners here on an angle carefully. Just like this. And now you can see this one flap is now released. And I'm just going to do the same for the other corners. Just like that. So now we have all four flaps are free. So now what I want to do is shorten the width of these flaps, of these edges here, so that they're not quite so tall. And so let's first of all check to see how tall we want them to be. Now in this case I want my flaps to be exactly 1¼ inches wide, because that is the measurement that I have in my graphics that I designed. So let's go ahead and measure that. Okay, so now I'm just going to make marks at 1¼ inches on two ends of this flap. So 1¼ is about there, and 1¼ is about there. All right, so now I can go ahead and cut off this edge here. And it takes a few passes to get all the way through, but I just have to do it carefully until it releases itself, which it should be now. So there. Okay, so now we have this flap cut down to the correct width, and I'll just go ahead and do that to the remaining 3 flaps. There we go. So now we have all 4 flaps cut down to the proper width, but you can see we have this strip of paper on the inside of the flaps. So I like to remove that as well, because it is not needed and it might interfere with the adhesion of the graphics to the cardboard. In this case, this one seems pretty well stuck on. So sometimes they're stuck on well, sometimes they're not. If they're stuck on well like this one is, then I don't need to bother taking it off. So these ones are pretty well glued on, and I think I'm just going to leave these on then in this case. Maybe I'll just peel off the loose edges here if there are any. Yeah, so these papers are pretty well stuck on, so I'm just going to leave them on. And now this box should be the right dimensions to fit inside the lid. And if I bring the lid back here, and we just pop this inside just the way it is for now. And we'll see how much of an overhang we get. And there we go. So you can see there's much less of an overhang now. And it looks really good, I think. So this, I think, is the perfect dimension for our game box. So now what we need to do, of course, is attach these flaps back together because they're obviously loose here. Now when we do apply the graphics to the outside of this back part of the box, or the bottom of this box, the graphics will wrap around the corners, but not enough so to be really sturdy to hold this box together. So what I'm going to do is use some tape to stick this together, and that will give it some reinforcement in the corners to give it some more rigidity and let it regain its original shape. Now the kind of tape that I like to use is this double-sided tape here, and the reason I like to use this is for two reasons. One, because it's really thin, and the other reason is because since it's double-sided, it will help to hold the graphics onto the box as well once we put those on. Although that part is not really necessary because we're going to be using some adhesive to do that. But I like to use this thin double-sided tape. So we're going to go ahead and cut some pieces of this tape and apply it to the corners of the box. Alright, so I have my tape cut now. This is about 1¼ inches long, which is the same width as the flaps that I made. So let's go ahead and apply it to the corner now. So I just stick it on like that. Right, and I'll do the same for the other three corners as well. There we go. So now we have a bit of reinforcement on all four corners of the box. And later we'll go ahead and peel off the coating for this double-sided tape when we're ready to apply the graphics. So that is the bottom half of the box ready to go. And we have the top half of our box. So they're going to fit together just like they did before. The top half over the bottom half. So now what we want to do, of course, is cut out our graphics. And here they are here. So starting with the top half, I'm just going to go and cut out around the edges of this graphic and prepare it to install on the box. Alright, so there we go. We have our top half of the graphics cut out now. And we can go ahead and get ready to apply this to the box. That will be our next step. So let's go ahead and do that now. Alright, so before I can mount this graphic onto the box, what I need to do is apply some adhesive to the back of it here. And what I'm going to use is this photo mount photo safe adhesive, and I guess you could probably use a variety of different types of spray adhesive or whatever type of adhesive you want, but I've found that a spray adhesive such as this seems to work well. So I'm going to go ahead now and apply spray adhesive to the back of this graphic for the top of the box, and then we'll come back and we'll apply it onto the box. So I've gone ahead and applied the spray adhesive to the back of this graphic. Just carefully spraying it on outside so I don't get spray glue all over my house. And you probably can't see it, but it's got a bit of a stickiness to it here. You see I've got glue on there now, so it's sticky. Now we have to work a bit fast before the glue dries. And this part is fairly easy. You just need to make sure that you get the right half of the box for the right graphic. So in this case, I want the top half of the box, which is this one, the one that we didn't cut the corners on. And what I'm going to do is simply line up the corners of this box with the corner cutouts here on this graphic. Okay, so I'll go ahead and do that now. And usually if you line up one end, it seems like the other end should line up automatically because it's symmetrical, of course. Okay, so this should be somewhat close. All right, so I've got the graphic aligned now, and it's not perfect, but it's pretty close. So you can see the corners there are pretty close to the corner cutouts. Of course, you want to get as close as you can get and try to make sure that you get your image printed as accurately as possible to match your box. So here we go. We have our top part now glued to the box. Now all we need to do is lift up the sides and glue them over as well. So what I do is I lift up these edges with the tabs first, because I want the tabs to be underneath the edges that don't have the tabs. So that's just going to provide some continuity between the two edges so that there's not a big crack in between them. So I'm going to go ahead and fold up this edge here. It always looks, it's so satisfying folding these graphics onto the box. You can see already how nice it's going to look. So we'll go ahead and do the other one now. Beautiful. Okay, so now that that's folded up, we have an extra flap here that we can fold down into the box as well. It just wraps around the edge of the box like that. Okay, and then we have these tabs here that we need to fold down as well. So we just fold these down. And we'll do the same on the other flap here on the opposite edge. Fold the corner down. All right, and then finally we do the remaining two sides here. Try and get a nice crease in there when you fold it over, and try and eliminate any air bubbles if you can. And then of course we fold the inside. Now you can see here that the graphic here, you can see what's the best way to show this to you. Okay, you can see here that the graphic, yeah, so that's probably the best angle, that the graphic is right up to the edge of the box. So it would be better if the graphic ended at the inside of the corner instead of going out past right to the edge of the box. So you can always adjust your graphics and trim it up nicer if you want, but this should work fine for now. So let's go ahead and fold this part down. So the inside corners might look a bit ragged, but that's nothing too serious. Invasion of the Cloud People. The next storm. All right, and then fold down our last edge here. And there we go. We have our completed box top. The next spectrum, next Invasion of the Cloud People. The next storm. Looks pretty cool, I think. And so just try and be careful with it and line up your graphics as best you can, and measure your graphics to make it line up as perfectly as you can with the box. Now since this is just regular paper that I used, I'm just smoothing out all the air bubbles here. Since this is just regular paper, it's not going to be particularly sturdy or mark resistant, so you could easily scratch this paper like you could any other regular paper, but this is the easiest way to do it. I've tried putting some laminating sheets over this, but I don't really like the effect. That's actually what I used for my Dungeon Quest game. Well, it's one that I experimented with for my Dungeon Quest game, and it turned out to be too thick. I didn't like the way the edges were too thick and overlapping, and I like the glossiness of it, but I didn't like the edges, and the lamination was too thick, and it made it difficult for the box to go together easily. So I don't do that anymore. I just leave it just like this. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Too bad there's glare on there. How can we get rid of that? Okay, there. So I think this looks really good. And now what we're going to do is make the bottom half of this box. So again, I'm going to go ahead and cut out this graphic for the bottom half of the box. Then I'll spray it with adhesive glue, and we'll come back and we'll apply it to the box. All right, here we go. I've got the bottom half graphic of this design sprayed with spray adhesive on the back here, sticky. So it's ready to apply to the bottom of our box. But remember, we have our double-sided tape on our box here that we need to remove. So I'll go ahead and remove the top covering from that now. Okay, so now we have our double-sided tape in the corners, and that's supposed to reinforce our box to give it some more rigidity, which it seems to work pretty well doing that. And of course, once we put our graphic on top of the box, it's going to provide even more rigidity. So that's what we're going to do now, the same way we did it before. And so now we're doing the bottom, and we're going to line it up again as before. There, just like that. Smooth it out a bit. Okay, so now we can go ahead and lift up the flaps just like we did for the top, starting with the ones that have these tabs on the edges. Go ahead and fold those up. And again, you want to try to get your graphics sized properly so that they fit the box nicely, so that when you fold in all these edges, they all kind of go together somewhat smoothly without too much raggedy edges hanging out in the corners. But this one looks like it's going together fairly well. And now I'm going to fold these tabs in as well. So you can see this tab is sticking out a bit, but it's not a huge deal. Let's go ahead and fold in the tabs here to try and get them looking as neat as possible. So the better you design and cut your graphics and measure them, the better the result will be. Okay, so I'm just going to fold up the edges now. And remember, these edges don't have any graphics on them because it's going to be hidden by the top half of the box anyway. And we'll go ahead and fold in these flaps here. Smooth it out and press it down nice and firmly to make sure it sticks on well. And then any rough corners, just press them down. And if you have too much hanging out here, you can always cut them off. Like here I have quite a large flap hanging out. So this one I'm just going to cut it off with my X-Acto here carefully. So it looks, and again, this is the bottom of the box, so it's not going to be super obvious because it's going to be hidden by the top of the box. But still, I don't want super large flaps of paper hanging out unnecessarily if I can avoid it. So just trimming off any super excess, and there we go. There's the bottom of our box. All right, so now the big moment where we match the top and bottom halves of our box together and we see what it looks like. And of course the graphics that we applied to the cardboard is going to make it a bit thicker, so it may fit more snugly than it did originally. But let's just put them together here and see how and if they fit. Okay, it took a bit of persuading, but it finally went together. But I think that looks really good. So there we go. We have our finished product now. Good, so there we go. So we have our box completed. So now what we want to do is go ahead and make our magnets, and we'll show you how to do that. So let's go ahead and take a look at that now. Alright, so here are the magnet sheets that we're going to use. Well, here are the graphics for the magnet sheets that we're going to make into magnets. And in order to make this into a magnet, we need a couple supplies, which I'll grab right now. And these are the two supplies we need. We need a magnet sheet. Now this is an 8x10 self-adhesive magnet sheet. You can see it has magnet material on the back, and on the front this is a peel away coating that will reveal a sticky side. So the back of this magnet is sticky underneath this paper, which is good because that means we don't need to use that spray adhesive for this process. Now the other thing we need is this self-adhesive laminating sheets. So these are also adhesive. So here on this side it's shiny. This is the lamination part, and then again we have an adhesive coating on the back. So this back paper peels away as well, and then underneath the clear plastic is adhesive. So again, no spray adhesive with this process, which makes it a lot easier. So they don't need to be perfect as long as they fit on the sheet. And so the sheet is 8x10, and you want to make sure that your graphic fits on the magnet sheet. So we'll turn the magnet sheet right side up, and we'll see which way this can go. So depending how you lay out your graphics and what size you make them, that will determine obviously how many you can fit on your magnet sheet. So in this case, I'm just going to trim down to the edges of my graphics so that I can apply them to these magnet sheets. Okay, so I have them trimmed down now. I have two strips here. And the reason I have two strips is because if I leave them together, they're just, the way I've laid it out, they're just a slight bit too wide to fit on my magnet sheet. So this way I can adjust the width of them and space them so that they'll fit on the sheet. Now the first thing we want to do is just take off the coating for this adhesive magnet. Just like that. And now we can go ahead and apply our graphics to the sheet. And I have lots of room on the top and bottom, so I don't need to worry too much about the top and bottom. But I'm just going to try and align it with the edge here as best as I can. That will also save me having to cut this edge of the graphic later when I cut the magnet, if I'm able to line it up pretty much perfectly. Okay, so there's the first graphic, and then I'll do the other ones here. There we go. So now we have our graphics applied to our magnet sheet. And we'll just do a quick smooth out here to get rid of any obvious bubbles. So now the next step we want to do is go ahead and apply the clear plastic to the top. And the way I'm going to do this is by peeling back a bit of the coating on the adhesive side, but not all of it. And I'll show you why in a minute. So I'm just going to pull it back just about a couple inches like this. And then I'll smooth it down to make it crease so it stays in that position. So now you can see I've got just part of it peeled off there. And now I turn it over and I can position it over my magnets just like this. And I smooth out the top part or the edge part that's exposed there. And now I grab my backing sheet, and while I press with my top hand, and if you want you can put maybe a ruler here or something to help press it down, but I simultaneously pull away this backing sheet while smoothing away the top part with my hand. Just like that. So now we have our clear adhesive lamination coating on top of our magnets. And I actually just bought myself a new tool, which is right here. This is a rubber roller. So if you can see, which you won't be able to see on the camera there, but and I'll just try to show you, but in person you can see that there's some light spots on these magnets, like right here. You can see, for example, right here you can see it's kind of hazy in here, this haziness right here. So these magnets have kind of a, it looks like it has a haze on them underneath this plastic. It's not nice and crisp. It has this gray kind of haze where the air has been trapped underneath. So then what I'm going to do is go ahead and use my roller to get rid of that haze and to roll out any air bubbles that might be trapped inside there. So I'll do this bottom row here and we'll see how it looks. And it looks like it's working really well. So there we go, let's take a look. So now the bottom one here has been rolled, and you can see it doesn't have this kind of gray bubbly haze that this top middle one has as much. This one is more shiny, and when you look at it in person it looks really nice. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to roll out these magnets to get rid of those bubbly parts. And you can always roll them again afterwards, after you've cut them out too, if you still find that they need more rolling. But I'll just do an initial run here to get rid of the initial obvious bubbles. And this process also helps to adhere the layers together. Okay. So there we go. So now all we need to do is cut out these magnets. So I'll go ahead and do that now. Just cutting around the graphics. And I'm cutting right through the magnet. So the magnet is actually quite soft. It's not too difficult to cut through. So there, I think just a couple slices did that one. There you can see the bottom is now cut. There we go. So now I have my edges all cut off. Now I just need to go ahead and cut the insides. And there we go. That is how I make my magnets. Okay, so I decided to make a bit of a change. I noticed that the box that I made, it fits together too tightly, so I want to try and improve that. And I also noticed that between these two boxes, the white one and the black one, it seems that the black one is a bit more difficult to remove, to separate. It fits quite tightly normally, whereas the white one seems to come apart more easily, like that. So I'm going to try to make another box using the white one instead, and I'm going to make a couple other changes. One is, remember how we cut down the bottom box to make it shorter, and then we put some double-sided tape on the outside of the corners to stiffen it? This time I'm going to do the same, except I'm going to try putting the double-sided tape on the inside of the corners so that it won't interfere with the box going together. And also, one other change I'm going to make is on the graphics here. I'm going to try eliminating these little tabs here, because those also come in between the bottom and the top half of the box, so that's going to make it a bit stiffer as well. So I'll try just making it without these tabs. I don't think they're really necessary for the bottom half of the box. So I'll go ahead and make another version of this box using the white one, and then, assuming that all goes well, I'll come back and show you what that looks like. Alright, so I've got the bottom half of the artwork cut out now, ready to be glued onto the box. And you can see that there are no more tabs on the end panels that need to be folded over the box, because I want to try without the tabs to see if it makes the box fit together any more easily. And one thing I wanted to mention, if you happen to try to make these boxes for yourself, is remember that the top half and the bottom half of the boxes are actually slightly different sizes. So obviously the box is, it's a 6-inch by 8-inch box, but that is the top half, which is this half. So this top edge is exactly 6 inches, and this side edge is exactly 8 inches. But since, of course, the bottom half fits inside the top half, the bottom half needs to be slightly smaller in order to fit inside the top half. So when you're designing your graphics, you want to make sure that they fit as closely as possible to being exact measuring with your box half that you're applying it to. So for the bottom half, you want to make sure that the graphics, so here for example, this graphic, the inside rectangle part here would not be exactly 6 inches by 8 inches, but it would be slightly less than that, because we want the edges of the box bottom half to line up exactly with the dimensions of the diagram. So I just wanted to mention that before I go ahead and assemble this onto the box, which is what I'm going to do now. So I'll be back in a moment. Okay, back again. So it turns out I lied, I guess. I was going to, as I mentioned, put the double-sided tape here on the inside of the corners so that there wouldn't be extra tape on the outside of the corners to interfere with the box closing properly. But then I realized, since this tape is now on the inside of the corner and I no longer have those tabs on my graphic edges to fold over the edge of the corner, there's nothing holding the corners of this box shut effectively anymore. So what I'm going to do is go back to my original plan of putting the double-sided tape on the outside of the corners so that the double-sided tape will hold the box together, since the graphics are no longer holding the box together, and hopefully that will work out okay. So I'll go ahead and try that, and we'll see what it looks like in a moment. Alright, so there we go. I've now got my box, the bottom half of my box, reassembled with double-sided tape on the outside of every corner, like that. And then I'll put the graphic on this box and we'll come back and try to fit it into the top half, and we'll see how it goes. So I'll also, obviously I'm going to glue the graphics to the top half of the box as well, the white version of the box, and I think it should look okay. I don't think there's going to be any white showing through the graphics because it's solid paper, so there won't be, it shouldn't be see-through at all, so I don't think we're going to be able to see the white box through the graphics, but I'll go ahead and assemble it and we'll take a look at it, and hopefully it fits together a bit better than it did the first time. I've finished making the box now, so here is the bottom half and here is the top half, and these are using the white boxes this time because they fit together more easily, and it came out really nice. The top half came out pretty much perfectly, I would say. It's just the bottom half, I had a bit of an issue in the corners. I cut my graphics a bit too small, so some of the box is showing through there. So in this case it would be better to have a black box if I do that, so I should try to make sure I don't cut my graphics too small, but maybe I'll just try and color that in with a felt marker or something. Otherwise it looks pretty good, and let's give it a test and see how well it goes together. Bottom half and the top half. So this fits together a lot easier than the other one that I made using the black box. And so I think this is better because it's easier to get together and hopefully to get apart as well. So you might need to experiment with the different boxes that you're using and whether you want to put the double-sided tape on the inside of the corners or the outside of the corners, or if you want to use those fold-over tabs on the graphics. So I think I would prefer to have the graphics tabs folded over so we don't have any risk of gaps in the corners like this. But I'm not sure how much extra thickness that would add to the box. So apparently I'm not done quite yet because I'm not completely satisfied with my first two attempts at making this big box packaging. It's still not fitting quite right up to my standards. So I'm going to try a third time. We're on to plan C now, and I've got myself another white box. Hopefully this is the last one I'll need for now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a few more changes. So now I'm just going to cut the corners off of this box again, like I did before. Okay, so there we go. So now I've got the corners cut on this box bottom now, and I'm going to go ahead and trim down the flaps to the right dimensions. But what I'm going to do this time is, instead of using double-sided tape to attach the corners together, I'm going to glue them together using some contact cement. And this is a white contact cement with a little brush. So I'm going to try to just glue them. I don't actually remember how I made my last boxes because I did some experimentation on those as well. So I think I did end up using glue, but I don't remember. So I'm going to try gluing these corners together this time because I didn't like putting the double-sided tape on the inside. It didn't hold well enough, and I didn't like putting it on the outside because it took up too much room inside the box. It made the box too thick, and I would like to keep these tabs here on the edges of the flaps because they wrap around the corners and make the corners nice and black. It makes it more continuous, gives it a nice continuous look. And so instead of having double-sided tape adding thickness to the corners, I'm going to put these tabs back, and hopefully that won't add too much thickness. I think it'll be okay. But anyway, so now I'm going to go ahead and glue these corners together and make up another box, and we'll see how that looks and how it fits, and hopefully this will be my last attempt. So stick around and we'll come back and see how it looks. So I've gone ahead and applied glue to these corners now. So inside here you can see there's glue on the corners. And since this is contact cement, I just need to wait for them to set up a bit and dry a little bit so they're tacky, so then I can just press them together and they should stick to each other. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm just going to wait for them to dry, and while I'm waiting, I guess I'll cut out my graphics here for the bottom so we can go ahead and try this last technique. So I'll be back in a moment. Okay, I've got my box glued up now here in the corners, and it seems pretty good. Seems pretty sturdy. And of course I've also got my tabs on the edges here that are going to wrap around the corners and help hold it together as well. So I think this will be plenty sturdy enough, and I just hope it fits together well. So hopefully third time is a charm. We'll see if that's the case for us with this box. And now I'm going to go ahead and glue up the graphics and stick it on the box. And again, I'm using the white box because it seems to fit together a little better. So let's hopefully try this one last time and we'll see how it goes. All right, so I'm back and we have our third attempt now at making the Invasion of the Cloud People big box set, and I hope this works out okay, because this is the last time I'm going to try this, and however it is, I'm going to send this to TJ. So TJ, you better be happy with this one. I can see why they call you the ultimate bastard, because you make people work their ass off. Just kidding. So okay, so now first I want to show you the bottom of the box, and I think it came out really nice. Look at the corners. Using the flaps instead of double-sided tape, I think, is a much better choice, because it gives a nice corner that is the same color, because the flap obviously hides the corner, so it's nice and black all the way through the corner. So I really like the look of this. This looks perfect to me. This looks almost professional, I would say. So this, I'm really happy with this. This looks fantastic, I think. So now let's take a look at the top. The top is a bit easier to do, even though it takes more graphics to design, because there's graphics on the edges. Actual assembly of it is a lot easier, because obviously we don't have to cut down the edges to make the dimensions a bit smoother for fitting the box together. So there we go. There's the top. Invasion of the Cloud People, with the graphics on the side. The next storm with TJ's logo. TJ's logo there. And a cloud person down at the bottom. Same on the edges. I think it looks gorgeous myself. There we have a nice limited collector's edition big box version of the Cloud People. Better put myself back in focus here. Okay, there. So now let's see how these two halves fit together. Hopefully they fit together nicely, because it looks gorgeous. Okay, so I'm just going to flatten this down a bit more. I see a bit of an air bubble underneath. I want to smooth that out. Get rid of any air bubbles. Make sure the graphics are stuck on really nice. And that spray adhesive that I use seems to work really well. It's just kind of messy, so you probably want to do it outdoors so the adhesive fumes don't get stuck all over your furniture. So, all right, so let's see how they fit together now. Slightly tight, but I think that's pretty good. I think that's acceptable, and it will probably loosen up over time if you open it and close it, you know, several times. It might be good to have a bit more of a lip, than this, so you have something to grab. I probably could make this lip a bit bigger so that there's more to grab with your fingernails when you want to actually open this box. So it's a bit tricky now to open it, I think, but I think this is fine, and at least it's not super tight to close it and open it. Once I kind of get it started, then I can open it, fairly easily. Okay, so there we go. We have our final version of the Cloud People Limited Collector's Edition Big Box. So the final method that I used to make this was, after I cut down the corners of the bottom of the box, then I glued them together using white contact cement, and that worked really well. I just have to let it dry until it's firmed up. And then I have the tabs on the edges of my graphics that wrap around the corners. You can actually see it right here on the top. You can see underneath there's the tab right there that's wrapping around underneath. I don't think that is a problem the way it looks, even though it looks kind of obvious in the camera. In person it's not super noticeable. You can see it, but I don't think it detracts from the look of the box at all. And I think the final outcome looks fantastic. So there you go, TJ. There's your big box Cloud People version. You're the only one on the planet who will have this, except for the rejects that I have in my collection. So you're going to have the best version. Actually, you have the best versions of all my big box stuff, because all the ones that I keep are the prototype rejects, and you get the final versions. So this is going to be on its way to you shortly, and I hope you like it. Again, thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you next time. Take care.